Maybe I'm live now, but my screen is frozen. So I'm just waiting. Still says going live. You're live. That's what it says. Live for 24 seconds. So you saw me lagging. What am I going to talk about today? Merry Christmas. We have an hour and 41 minutes left. It's 10:19 p.m. in the Eastern time zone. What do I want to talk about tonight? What I want to talk about tonight is the lockdown, the absurdity of the lockdown, and also why it's not even, why, number one, why it won't work, and number two, why it's not even needed. And those are opinions, and I will back them up as best I can. We know that as of midnight tonight in Ontario, province-wide, that we are in so-called lockdown gray zone. I forget, I've lost track of the color coding. And what it means is gatherings of 10 or more people outdoors, not allowed. You're not allowed to have anyone into your house, verboten. Numerous businesses are closed. In anyone who's a waiter or waitress in a restaurant, sorry, you're out of work again. No in dining in is no longer allowed. Only curbside pickup or takeout delivery, that kind of thing. All kinds of restrictions. Church services restricted to 10 people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all know the drill. And is it going to work? Will it stop things? I shared this yesterday, and I went and I looked it up again. And well, let's start with the numbers first. Where are we right now? These are the numbers as of December 24th at 10:30 a.m. And there's this deadly virus. It's spreading like wildfire, or so we are told. These are the numbers from the province of Ontario's own portal page. They publish them every day at 10:30, but not today, Christmas Day. Merry Christmas again. So we now have a grand total. This is the total since the start of the pandemic. Total cases of 165,110 from February, March until now, 10, 11 months. That's how many cases there have been in Ontario. Confirmed positive tests. We are a province of roughly 14.8 million. Basically, 1.1% of the population has been identified as having a confirmed positive COVID test, which, as I mentioned yesterday, according to the province's own Associate Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Barbara Yaffe, Y-A-F-F-E, you can search that out yourself, close to 50% negative or false positives. But regardless, they still say it's 165,110. That's 1.1% of the population. So if you haven't, like me, and I'm nothing special, I'm basically with 99% of the population, never tested positive for COVID. I've never been tested, never had any need to be tested. Right now, current numbers, again, these are as of December 24, 10:30 a.m. They're saying that they were 967 hospitalized in our province. 967 are in hospital. Of that 967, 277 of those are in ICU, intensive care. And of those in intensive care, 176 are on ventilators. Okay. And if you look at the case counts, we hit a record on December 24, highest number of cases ever identified in a day. It was 2,447 reported at 10:30 a.m. on Christmas Eve, December 24. And that was out of 2,447 positive cases identified after having done 64,592 tests. Already did the math, that's 3.7% positivity rate. So of all the people who got tested, better than 96% tested negative. Then the day before it was 2,408, and that was a 4.2% positivity rate. 2,202 on the 22nd, 4.8 positivity rate. And we basically from the 15th to the 24th, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've had 10 consecutive days of 2,000 or more cases being identified. Testing has ranged on the low end from down around 40,000 up to almost 70,000. Quite a range. I think we're going to see that number 70,000. I think we're going to see that get up to 80, 90, and 100, which I'm about to talk about. And we look at the positivity rate. The positivity rate on the low end was 3.3%. That was on December 20th. 2,316 positives out of 69,412 tests, 3.3% positivity rate. That was the low end. The high end was back on the 15th, when they only did 39,566 tests, generating 2,275 positives. And that was a positivity rate of 5.7%. So basically we're looking at getting 3, 4, 5%. My guess, without going into detailed analysis, probably looking at an average of somewhere in and around 4% positivity rate. So if we get up to 100,000, and I don't doubt that we will, that's been a long stated goal going back to I think October, November. They started to say we want to ramp the testing up to 50 and get it up to 75, and eventually we want to get to 100,000. And no doubt they will. Plus we're going to have an extra cohort. We're going to have like 2 days worth of reporting when the next report comes out. And so if you get a 4% positivity rate on 100,000 tests, then we're going to be blowing these numbers away. Forget 2,447. We'll be up 4,000. You get up, on the 15th, the positivity rate was 5.7%. Be over 5, close to 6,000 positives. And people will lose their minds. We've got so many positives. All right. Right now in Ontario, we have 19,809 currently active cases. And when you work out the 967 in hospital, that's 4.9%. So 4.9% of the people who are identified as having an active case of COVID right now, just under 5% of them are in the hospital. So 9 are hospitalized, and that includes the ICU cohort, the ventilator cohort. 967 is the grand sum total, including everyone in ICU. So if you test positive for COVID, population-wide, and this has been fairly consistent, you've got about a 95% chance of not needing hospitalization. Doesn't mean you won't get sick. The most common symptoms from COVID are headache, muscle ache, dry, non-productive cough, or nothing at all, not even sick. I mentioned this yesterday. Iceland, they tested the heck out of their population. Population of 340,000. They've done about 400,000 tests. And so they've been able to really science the living heck out of COVID. And they found that the asymptomatic rate, the people who experienced no symptoms whatsoever in their population, 43%. And then, and this is being corroborated everywhere else, that the 3 most common symptoms, again, headache, muscle ache, non-productive cough. Oh, lots of numbers. So now we're in lockdown. So the case is going to go down, right? The lockdown will have a positive effect. Here's why I don't think so. And I mentioned this yesterday as well, but I've made it a little easier because I wrote it down ahead of time, so I'm going to have to scroll through a bunch of stuff. But look at all the international flights coming into Pearson. This is for tomorrow. This is for December 26th, over the course of the entire day. 2 flights coming in from Shanghai, China. 2 from New Delhi. Flight from Sao Paulo, Cairo. 2 from New York City. three from Newark, New Jersey. Got planes coming in from Ethiopia, Seoul, South Korea, Philadelphia. Charlotte has 2 flights coming in. Detroit has 3. Frankfurt, Germany. Zurich. Chicago has 4 flights coming in. Beijing, Dubai, Qatar, Tampa Bay. Fort Lauderdale has 3 flights. Fort Myers, also in Florida, has 3 flights. Orlando, again in Florida, has 2 flights. So that's 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 8 flights right there coming in from Florida, which we're told is a hotbed of COVID. We got 8 planes coming from there. Cancun, Mexico, we have 4. Montego Bay, 2. Paris, Amsterdam, Houston, Veradero, Nassau, West Palm Beach, Puerto Plata. Washington, we have 3 flights. Washington, D.C. Portugal, we have 2 coming in. Boston, 1. Punta Cana has 2. And then the rest are 1. Hong Kong, London, England, where we're told there's a new variant, a new strain of the virus, much more contagious. There's a flight coming in. Mexico City, Panama, Atlanta. And that's not even all of them. I left some off. There are more than 60 flights coming in. That's just the international flights. I left off all of the Canadian flights, domestic flights that are coming in. And there's a boatload of those as well, even more than the 60 plus I've mentioned here. Now, if you assume 100 people a plane, that's probably a conservative estimate. We're looking at 6,000 plus people. Probably in and around 10,000 people will be coming in to Ontario, Toronto Pearson International Airport tomorrow. That's just tomorrow. I don't think it's that much different any other day. So every week we got 100,000 plus people probably coming into this province or close. Yeah, basically the entire population of a city the size of Oshawa coming in to Ontario every week from all around the world. And that's just, again, that's just the international flights. So, and we think that that these lockdown measures that we're going to stop it from occurring by closing schools, by closing churches, by closing dining, restaurants, gyms, fitness centers. And if you go onto the province, they have setting by infection, or rather case numbers by setting, and those aren't the settings that are driving the case numbers. The biggest settings where outbreaks are occurring, surprise, surprise, is long-term care centers and retirement homes. Just go onto Ontario's COVID portal page, click on more data, and you can see all the breakdowns by numerous metrics, by setting. You can see age breakdowns, what are the ages of individuals who are becoming cases. You can do it cumulatively, you can do it daily, however you want. Lots of information there if you like statistics. It's wonderful. But even with all these measures, we know exactly who are most susceptible, most vulnerable to SARS-CoV-2, to this virus that causes the COVID-19 disease. And it's overwhelmingly the elderly and those with compromised health conditions. And usually those two go together, which is not unusual. As you get older, the rate of illness increases. I've shared before, I believe, you can go to the Ontario Long-Term Care Association. You can look in their long-term care, a profile of the residents, and it's not a pretty picture. It's medicine has done a wonderful job in extending our lives. We're living longer, but we're not necessarily always living healthier. And I have a family member who's 87 years of age and incredibly healthy, living in a retirement home, but in what they call independent living. So she's an aunt of mine, and she's a robust health. We've all read the stories. We know that COVID doesn't always have, it's not the most deadly disease on the face of the planet Earth. Malaria kills far more people worldwide than COVID does. COVID, Jack Nicklaus, who's over 80, and his wife, who's also over 80, both of them had it. It was widely reported. And neither one of them got sick. One of them, I forget which of the two, but one of them, they said the only negative thing that they experienced was a dry cough. That was the only real complaint, and they're both in their 80s. But it's now if you're in a long-term care facility with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and maybe kidney disease, and that's a very common trifecta. People develop diabetes, and diabetes quite often progresses to cardiovascular disease and then to kidney disease. And there are drugs, there are SGLT2 inhibitors and all kinds of medications out there now that have been approved in the past few years that are extending people's lives. But living longer, not necessarily living healthier. And now SARS-CoV-2 is coming along, and sadly, those who are particularly, overwhelmingly, the elderly and those with compromised health conditions are not able to fight it. And we know that. We've known that. I would argue from the beginning. The data was coming out of Italy back in March. Bloomberg did a story on it. I shared it here, not here, but on Facebook. And so we knew that. And yet, even knowing that, we still can't keep it out. We're breaking our backs, or the government is anyway, and our medical health professionals are, doing everything they can to keep everyone from getting infected. And they're doing a horrible job of protecting those who are most vulnerable to SARS-CoV-2. Because for most, the infection fatality rate, and again, I'm going to quote off the Iceland study because they scienced the living heck out of COVID, doing more tests than they have population, 400,000 tests for a population of 340,000. And they found out for their population, the infection fatality rate is 0.3%. So 99.7% recovery rate. And I've mentioned this before in previous videos, whatever. And that's, infection fatality rate is kind of a useless statistic in a lot of ways, because if you are that 85-year-old with diabetes, cardiovascular and kidney disease in a long-term care facility, or regardless of your setting, if that's your health condition and your age, it's not a 0.3%. There's not a 99.7 recovery rate. I would be very surprised if the recovery rate was even 50% in that cohort, in people in that specific situation. And so we know who's most vulnerable to SARS-CoV-2, and yet we, in trying to keep everyone from getting it, we're failing to keep it away from those for whom it is most deadly. So with all these flights coming in, I just wrote them down there. You can go to the Toronto Pearson International Airport, click next day arrivals, and you can see all the flights coming in and what time. It's not going to work, and we're going to see case numbers continue. And I'm convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that we're going to get to the end of this 4-week period, 2 weeks up north. And because the case numbers, we're going to be seeing 3, 4, maybe even 5,000, 6,000 cases a day in Ontario, that they're going to say, well, we wanted to lock down, but you guys aren't doing a good enough job. It's because it's your fault. That there's mostly, and I'm going to say it, it's for the vast majority of the population, it's a mostly benign virus. I know that runs counter to the narrative. If you turn on the news these days, it's the deadly coronavirus. Doug Ford says it all the time, Trudeau, the whole, Theresa Tam, everyone, they all say, we have to do everything we can to protect people from this deadly virus. Well, the flu is a deadly virus. Influenza killed almost 8,000, somewhere around 8,500 Canadians died of influenza pneumonia in 2018, and that's as per Statistics Canada. That's not from some alternative rebel news, Young Turks, garbage alternative news site. That's Statistics Canada. 8,500 Canadians died of the deadly influenza virus. It's a deadly virus. It can be. We're lucky to the extent that with influenza is not as influenza is less deadly. I can't get my words together. Sorry. What I mean to say is COVID is less deadly than influenza for young children. More children die of the flu in an average year than are dying of COVID right now. For whatever reason, I'm not an I've said it before, I'm not an epidemiologist, virologist, and no degrees in infectious disease, but all the data and all the statistics are published, and children die of the flu. Only very, 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 very rarely do they die of COVID. And I would submit, given my zero experience, but I would submit that a person, a young child dying of COVID likely would probably be susceptible to having serious complications and potentially, the flu being fatal as well. And I'm talking about people with conditions like lupus, autoimmune disorders, whatever the virus is, whether it's SARS-CoV-2 or an influenza strain. Unfortunately, sadly, in this world, not everyone has a robust immune system. There are things we can do, some of it is genetic, some of it is inherited, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just sad. Others, our lifestyle, especially in the Western world, especially in Canada, our fast food, deep fried diet is not healthy. Obesity is said to be a major driver of bad outcomes. I was reading, I think it was Florida State University, did a study because the numbers were very high in Florida. So I was just curious as to, what's the obesity rate in Florida? 37%, according to that was the University of Florida, the Seminoles that they had done. I believe it was done in tandem with Florida's public health department, the state's public health department. Got one more thing to say. So the lockdown, we're stuck with it. It's not going to work. That's my opinion. We'll see if that bears out. But all these 10,000 people a day coming into Ontario from all around the world, and probably 20, 30,000 more from other parts of Canada, other parts of Ontario. We're moving around like crazy. But that's essential. Just like smoking. Smoking is an essential thing in this province because it's all about the health. But church isn't. And I've mentioned before, I am a Christian, and I don't have to go to church. I want to go to church. And it bothers me that I can't. And coming this Sunday, everything's online, and I've mentioned it before. I stole the line from someone else, but it's a good one, so I'm repeating it. Trying to, connect, trying to feel in the spirit, watching a like this, a YouTube type video. That's like trying to get warmth from that fireplace TV station that they have during the holidays. You get no warmth from it. You get no connection from watching a church service on TV. I like to be around people. I did go to church on Christmas Eve. It's allowed. It was a wonderful service. I won't say the name. But pastor read a wonderful story about a Christmas rifle that I'd never heard before. I thought he was going to tell the story about Ralphie and the BB gun from A Christmas Story, but it was something from the 1880s. Wonderful, wonderful, heart-warming story. It's not the same sitting at the house and watching it on a computer in two-dimensional and then your phone can ring, a truck can go rambling down the street. Church is essential. And there's a church in Montreal called Église de la Nouvelle Création. Yeah, chance for me to get my French on. I was reading an article in La Presse, and fortunately I am bilingual to a degree. On va voir. Si j'en ai des amis francophones, ils vont dire que je parle français comme notre vache espagnole, mais c'est plus québécois, d'une façon québécois, un anglophone. Anyway, the Église de la Nouvelle Création. Funny thing is, I just swore there. Not really. Colin is like saying, dang it. But anyway, Église de la Nouvelle Création is a church in Montreal. And they've been wide open. And they're continuing. They're still wide open. And from what I understand, they're not masking, they're not distancing. And the police and bylaw officers are leaving them alone. This is my message. I'm going to note it's at about the 25-minute mark. This is my message to my Christian friends, and especially to pastors and members of leadership within churches. Open your churches. Open. This is needed. The isolation, these lockdown measures are bringing hammer people. People need. You don't have to go to church. It's not a requirement, but there are people who need it for their mental health, for their spiritual health, for their well-being. Open. And as I found out with this Église de la Nouvelle Création, the way they've been able to stay open in spite of the ordinances prohibiting it is because on their doors, they have published Section 176 of Canada's Criminal Code, in particular Section 2. I'm going to read it. I got to go onto a different page on my browser. But now here, I'll just read it. This is what it says in Canada's Criminal Code. It'll take a second for the page to load. But basically, here's what it says. Obstructing or violence to or arrest of officiating clergymen. Every person is guilty. This is Section 1. Every person is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 2 years, or is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction, who, and when you go to Section 2, this is where it is, disturbing religious worship or certain meetings. Everyone who willfully disturbs or interrupts an assemblage of persons met for religious worship or for a moral, social, or benevolent purpose is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. Everyone, and this is idem, so addendum to Section 2, subsection 3, everyone who, at or near a meeting referred to in subsection 2, willfully does anything that disturbs the order or solemnity of the meeting is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. So what this church, Église de la Nouvelle Création, Church of the New Creation, what they've done is they published that. They printed it off and put it right on their door. And Montreal Area Police Services have said, our hands are tied. This is a criminal code. This is written in Canada's criminal code. Canada is a democracy, and we are a country that we have what is called the rule of law. And the highest law in the land in our country is the Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. After that comes the criminal code. Okay? And now we have public health officers basically ignoring those higher ends of law and superseding it. And Section 176, if a bylaw officer was to come in with police or without and try to issue tickets to congregants or the pastor of a church or the imam of a mosque or the rabbi in a synagogue or whatever the case may be it a Sikh temple or Hindu temple, they are violating Canada's criminal code. And it's occurred to me that, and I even did a little research into this, as a citizen in this country, we got to be careful. Canadians, we tend to think that we tend to think of ourselves as Americans in a lot of cases. You'll hear Canadians say, I take the Fifth, which is the Fifth Amendment to the US Constitution against self-incrimination. Doesn't exist. We don't have a Fifth Amendment, but we say it anyway. And so, you hear about citizens' arrest, but most of the references I have for that are American. So I checked it. Yes, in Canada, a citizen can make an arrest. It's only an extreme. The webpage I was reading, it was a government website, site was saying, you should be extremely cautious, that there are dangers involved if you physically try to detain somebody. But I don't know that that would be necessary in this case. I mean, everyone's got their cameras, their smartphones now. Click on the video, and ask the bylaw officer, are you aware that you are interrupting a religious service and that you're in violation of Canada's Criminal Code, Section 176? Well, I can play it out in my mind, and I can imagine the person saying, "Oh, what? Section 176? Have it ready. Show it to them. Look, here's Canada's Criminal Code, Section 176. You are violating subsection 2 and 3, and this is punishable by can mean imprisonment, no more than 2 years. You'll be out, 1 year, 364 days." Do you really want to go and give these tickets? Usually I've been noticing when churches when this happens, churches, bylaw enforcement officers are usually there with police. And so you can tell the police, I'm making a citizen's arrest. I want to file charges against this individual. Now, how far would it go? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer either. I'm not an epidemiologist, virologist, or infectious disease expert. I'm also not in law enforcement, and I don't have a legal degree. With that being said, would there be a Crown prosecutor willing to take press charges against a public bylaw officer for violating Canada's Criminal Code? Maybe some lawyer will see this and can chime in. Just my thoughts. See if I covered off everything I wanted to. Got the number of people in hospital. We've got basically 19,809 people who are currently, that's Ontario's current infection rate. 4.9 of them are in hospital. So of the people who are currently identified, 95% are not needing medical care. If you look at the people in hospital, how many people are hospitalized in Ontario? It is 0.006% of the population. So if you don't know anyone who's sick with COVID and in need of medical treatment, well, you don't know the 0.006, because that's where we are right now. 99.99% of us are not needing medical treatment for COVID. Of the 19,809 current cases in our province of about 14.8 million, that's 0.1% of the population. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to. Merry Christmas again. And if you like this, if you know a church and you want to share it about Section 176, which I mentioned at about the 25-minute mark, you can say, skip the rest of this guy, he's an idiot, but go to the 25-minute mark and check out this bit about Section 176 of the Criminal Code of Canada, which makes it illegal. And there is a church in Montreal, you can look it up, Église de la Nouvelle Création, Church of the New Creation in Montreal, that has been open wide, no distancing, no masking, church. And I say God bless them. It's, if you're deathly afraid of COVID, fair enough. I'm a libertarian at heart. Live and let live. If you want to walk around in a hazmat suit, I'm not going to begrudge anyone. Fear is fear. People are afraid right now. And in some cases, someone that I mentioned, diabetes, cardiovascular, and kidney disease, a common trifecta, perhaps it's quite warranted. Anyway, best of the season. Try and stay happy. I'm going to. I mean, it's easy for me to the extent that I'm still working, so I still get social contact. I'm not isolated like like many, but my heart goes out to those who are. I know many people just have their tunnel vision, and I wish I could do that in a way. It would make life easier. But the things that get on my heart are when when I have friends who's, are seeing their businesses destroyed. No matter what they do, they it's not even, give me the rules. I'll follow the rules. Everyone wore masks. I disinfect everything. I haven't had one reported case, of anyone coming into my gym or fitness center or restaurant. Oh, it doesn't matter. You're all shut. And it's draconian. It's authoritarian. This is not a democracy. This is this is an autocracy that we're living in right now, a health mandated autocracy, where normally in the court, the way laws get passed is legislation is proposed, it is written, it is debated on the floor of the House of Commons or on Queen's Park in Ontario or whatever other provincial legislature it is. We follow Westminster. I believe it's called the Westminster system, parliamentary system, where there's a first reading of the bill, there's a second reading of the bill, then it goes for a vote, and it has to pass. After it passes, it has to go to the Senate. After the Senate, if the Senate votes in favor of it, then it goes to the Governor General, the Queen's representative. If she signs it, it's a she right now, Julie Payette. If she signs it, then it becomes law. That's a normal system. And there are committees. The public is given a chance. Stakeholders are given a chance to be heard. It's not dictatorial. Dictatorial is just, here it is. Like it or lump it. That's North Korea. That's China. That's Vietnam. That's communist style dictatorial government. That's not the way we operate in Canada. I know Trudeau, and this annoys me, I'm going on to a bit of a rant here, but he said prior to being elected in 2015, during an open forum town hall type meeting, he said something to the effect of, well, I have a certain degree of admiration for China. Their basic dictatorship allows them to get things done. Well, at an enormous cost. Yes, you get that building built really quick. Yes, but you trample all over people's human rights, their God-given human rights. We do not derive our rights from government. I'll save that for the next video. Anyway, God bless. Merry Christmas. Try and stay positive. If you have a comment, put it down. I check periodically. And if you want to share it, go ahead. And keep well. Going to end stream.